And we're following breaking news in the Middle East. The U.S. this morning has just begun a new wave of strikes against Iran as pressure ramps up to negotiate who will control the Strait of Hormuz. Donald Trump is warning that it will only get worse for Iran if they don't come back to the bargaining table.
I'll save the energy targets for last, but ultimately we'll hit energy targets. We're being very careful with the civilian population, as you know, but I said, you better make a deal. You're not going to have anything left.
The latest threat on civilian infrastructure comes after days of tit-for-tat strikes and the reimposition of the U.S. Navy blockade in the Strait. Iran is now threatening to halt energy exports in response. Inside Iran, the country's health ministry says more than 260 people were wounded in overnight U.S. strikes, and dozens of people have been killed in recent days. And Crystal Gamansing is tracking the latest from our London bureau. So, Crystal, let's begin with the latest flare-up in violence. Just this morning, the U.S. launched attacks on Iran for a fifth straight day. Tell us about the rising stakes.
Yeah, well, this is all, according to American officials, an effort in order to secure the Strait of Hormuz. Those strikes again today on top of ones overnight. Yesterday, we saw the longest American attack campaign since the ceasefire began. It lasted for about 7 hours, according to American Central Command. This is all in an effort to try to gain control of the Strait of Hormuz. The United States has reinstated the blockade, stopping Iranian vessels or vessels carrying Iranian oil from going in or out. That is a pressure tactic to try to force Iran to the table and sign a deal that would be, what the United States president wants to see in terms of a deal. But whether or not that will actually happen, or if this will lead to an even greater escalation or return of all-out war, we just don't know yet. But there is this continuous flare-up back and forth as they fight over control of the strait, Chris.
And so,
I'll save the energy targets for last, but ultimately we'll hit energy targets. Next week it gets really bad for them because next week comes the power plants. Next week comes the bridges. We're going to knock out all their power plants. We're going to knock out all their bridges unless they get to the table and negotiate.
And that is exactly what we were just talking about, Chris, the pressure to get to the table to negotiate. Worth noting that we have heard this kind of rhetoric from U.S. President Donald Trump in the past. Also worth noting that if he goes through with that, it could potentially be a war crime if he targets facilities that are required for civilians, such as energy, such as bridges.
And Crystal, this seems to be a question that we keep asking by the day with no definitive answer. But what does all of this activity mean for the ceasefire?
Yeah, well, the ceasefire is technically still in place as neither side has pulled out of the memorandum of understanding that was signed in June. So technically things are still standing. But of course, it doesn't really matter if both sides continue to attack each other. We have those strikes that are ongoing right now in a new wave, according to American officials. All of the strikes last night, as I mentioned, a 7-hour-long campaign targeting coastal locations as the United States says it is trying to take out any of Iran's abilities to fire on ships in the Strait of Hormuz, but also Iran then responding by targeting what it says are American bases and military infrastructure on its neighbors in the Gulf. For example, we know that Kuwait was hit overnight. Kuwaiti officials saying they had to deploy defense systems, that a warehouse was hit. We have some images of that strike as well. Bahrain hit again, as well as Jordan. So there is a ratcheting up not only of the rhetoric, but also of the strikes that we are seeing in and around the Strait of Hormuz, and then those responses.
Great. Crystal Gamansing in London. Thank you for that.